100 works make up the National Library exhibition entitled Showman, the photographs of Frank Hurley, now on display at Newcastle Regional Museum. The pioneer of camera craft in Australia was our official photographer for both World Wars. He was commissioned by the federal government to capture how the nation was built, which included a series of pictures taken at the Newcastle Steelworks in 1938, now held in trust by the City Library.
It's been held by the library on the glass plate negatives that Hurley took, and we've been able to reprint 9 of the shots. There are some 54 of the negatives held in the library.
Hurley and his cameras traversed the globe for most of his 77 years, capturing images from the Middle East through Papua New Guinea and the Antarctic. He gained notoriety as a master of photographic deception.
Used to try and enhance, shall we say, the shot by manipulating the image, and in some of the shots you can see around the exhibition, this same cloud might appear 3 or 4 times.
The still pictures are also complemented by video reproductions of his film work. Showman is on display until December 12.
Newcastle architect Steve Doran believes the Hunter can attain Olympic standard facilities and at half the cost by using existing venues. An international aquatic centre he bases at Lambton Pool. His $3 million plan includes heating and covering the Olympic and diving pools with a Teflon-coated fiberglass, which has been used on venues like the Perth Superdome. This would also make it a year-round facility, increasing its viability.
I believe it's the only facility of its type outside Sydney that can house swimming, diving, water polo and synchronised swimming all within the one complex.
Mr Doran also envisages spending $4 to $5 million upgrading the velodrome, making it a multi-purpose centre. This includes covering it with the same fiberglass to accommodate cycling, plus sports like netball and athletics, but a modification would be needed.
To run an indoor circuit and short circuit, which would be 180 metres around, you would have to bank the corners. In doing so, the only way to do it here successfully would be to excavate.
While Steve Doran's plans cater for an indoor athletics track, a $15,000 study has been commissioned by the local Athletics Association to determine the best location for an outdoor Olympic standard facility. 6 sites in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie were canvassed, including the Newcastle Athletics Track and the Norm Johnson Oval at Spears Point. National Park was the preferred venue.
It has a fair bit of infrastructure there at the moment, which would mean that it'll be cheaper.
Funding for Mr Doran's plans would require contributions from sporting groups and the various levels of government. Having already gained support from local sporting groups, Mr Doran hopes to discuss his ideas with Newcastle City Council within the next few weeks.
Sevens is a basic concept that requires each player except the wicket-keeper bowl 1 over. If a batsman scores 42 runs, he must retire. Despite that restriction, the game still favours the big hitters.
It's probably more of a batsman's game than a bowler's game. The bowler is on a bit of a hiding to nothing. If he bowls extremely well, that's a nice little bonus, but I think as a bowler you're going to expect to go for a few runs from time to time.
If this weekend's games prove a success, organisers already plan to start an international series with Australia, the West Indies and Asian teams. The first of Sunday's games start at 10 o'clock at No. 1 Sports Ground.
The US Air Force's crack 44th Fighter Squadron based in Okinawa, Japan has converged on Williamtown for exercise Cope Boomerang. The Americans have brought a dozen of their F-15 Eagles for what's being dubbed a rematch with our No. 3 Squadron. They last locked horns over the Northern Territory during exercise Pitch Black 2 years ago. Today's flying didn't go to plan, with one American pilot taken out of action when the undercarriage of his jet fighter failed to fully retract on takeoff. Aircraft and pilot returned safely, but the strength of the 130-strong US contingent became evident, with engineers and crew waiting at the runway as planned in case of such emergencies. The F-15 is regarded as the Cadillac of the American fighter fleet, but Williamtown's Hornets have been selected as opponents because we're regarded as a formidable challenge.
The F-18 is a really good match for us. We fly against a variety of airplanes elsewhere, and the F-18 is about the most formidable opponent we have. They're doing real well here.
Members of No. 3 Control and Reporting Unit at Williamtown are an integral part of the exercise, performing air defence operations. Cope Boomerang will continue for 3 weeks.
Children from private and state schools around Waratah came up against each other today in the second rugby development course for the area. Since they first tried Walla Rugby in March, players have picked up most of the rules and were often prompting the referees in their decisions. The refs mainly found themselves providing tips on technique and enforcing the no push and no body tackle rule, allowing the girls to shine.
I had a girl in my under 10 side, and she was in there all the time tackling and having a ball, so to speak, you know.
And at No. 1 Sports Ground this afternoon, the 300 Academy cricket teams were given a lesson by one of the sports masters. Rod Marsh's time on the field now is mainly confined to coaching the Australian Institute of Sport team. And while he watched the network out and offered tips to our best young players, he was also wearing the hat of a talent scout.
I mean, if we see someone that we really think we like, we always get their name. And who knows, 2 or 3 years down the track, they could be playing for the Academy.
One player who did catch his eye was 16-year-old Jamie Heath from Belmont. The young fast bowler is already rumoured to be on the shortlist for the state under-17 team.
Keen to defend their club champion title, Port Macquarie martial artists are looking forward to some fierce competition on home soil. 40 locals have entered the 2-day event that also includes competitors from Lismore, Sydney and Gosford. Events such as sparring, patterns, breakfalls and self-defence choreography are being contested. The choreography combines the arts of Aikido, Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. Aim and accuracy seems to be the key to excelling at this sport, and excelling is what more than 70 shooters from New South Wales and Queensland were aiming for. $1,600 worth of prize money and trophies is up for grabs over the weekend, which also marks the last round of the North Coast Top 10 shooting competition. Port Macquarie's Alan Burkle made his mark early this morning, shooting a 75 with 10 centres in the first round. Donna Stewart from Sydney was also shooting well, scoring a 75 with 8 centres. With state and national teams to be announced soon, competitors are out to impress. And it seems after the early rounds, Alan and Donna's efforts are right on target.
All right, I'll see you later, fellas.
All right,
See you next weekend, Terry.
This photo was taken by a security camera inside the Newcastle Permanent Building Society at New Lambton. The man burst into the branch last Friday and threatened staff with a sawn-off .22 calibre rifle. Police believe the same man is responsible for 3 other raids, and on each occasion his brazen attack has been photographed. His first robbery was in January at the Greater Newcastle Building Society in New Lambton. He next struck in May at the National Australia Bank at the Junction. 3 months later, he robbed the Hunter Street branch of the National Australia Bank.
Yes, this offender does appear to be aggressive. He's very loudly spoken when he commits these offences, and he's very threatening to the staff.
Each time he's escaped with what police describe as a moderate sum of money. Despite being well disguised, police say he's in his late 20s, 170 centimetres tall with fair skin. His clothing is always similar: jeans, a sloppy joe and a cardigan. He could possibly wear a wig, and he hides his face with a scarf. He also wears a straw or Andy Cap style hat. The sawn-off rifle he carries has a magazine attached, and he bundles the cash into plastic shopping bags. He usually flees from the scene in stolen early model Commodores, which he dumps nearby. Police are asking anyone with this type of car to be on the lookout. They believe the man will strike again and say he is dangerous. Anyone with information should contact Newcastle Police. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The trial is due to begin from the start of next month. However, banks of meters have already disappeared from the inner city streetscape. Newcastle Council agreed to a 6-month expiry for the parking meters, following a campaign by the Chamber of Commerce aimed at helping business in the city. While some meters have been removed, others remain, which means for those not quick enough, you still have to pay for use of your parking spot. Poles which support the meters remain in the ground, and Newcastle Council says they will be capped so the protruding metal doesn't pose a danger to the public. For the remaining meters, they're expected to be removed before the Inner Newcastle trial begins next Monday.
The batsmen from the Institute were just starting to warm up when the heavens opened, a torrential downpour stopping play and leaving the pitch fairly damp. Both sides inspected the turf and agreed that play should continue if the roller could soak up the added moisture. When play did resume, the Newcastle bowlers went to work. Initially, Michael Varnum was belted all over the place, but struck back, taking 4 for 45. Michael Gerrits from Gloucester was another to stand out, along with wicket-keeper Rob Merlo, who threw himself at everything. Although the Newcastle bats didn't fare so well, they all agree it was a valuable learning experience. And at Thornton today, the bowling wasn't quite as quick, but they had the same intention in the semi-final of the Taverners Shield. The Thornton Primary School girls in yellow hit the Wellington Public attack all over the park. Jodie Randall top scored with 40 not out in her team's 4 for 115 win. The Blues gave Thornton plenty of second chances though. Thornton now moves on to the final to be played in Wollongong late next month. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
The two-day event showcases the region's primary school talent. 400 young choristers will perform during the expo, travelling from as far as Murrurundi, south to Waihee and east to Nelson Bay. While providing entertainment for the local community, the event is also a rehearsal for the Hunters Mass Choir. Next month it plans to represent the region during the State Primary Choral Festival at Sydney's Opera House. And it seems some young performers can't wait for the big day.
The mock tobacco product known as Other People's Smoke, or OPs, was launched today during a tongue-in-cheek ceremony at the South Stain. Chairman of the fictitious Kaufman's Tobacco Company, Mr Emphysema, did the honours. Behind the theatrics, there was a serious message. The campaign is part of a statewide health department initiative to target passive smoking. Associate Professor Michael Hensley from the John Hunter Hospital says even if you don't take a puff yourself, inhaling other people's smoke is dangerous.
Passive smoking is a serious health threat. There are quite strong studies that link it to the occurrence of cancer, lung cancer, in non-smokers.
Michael Hensley says you're more likely to develop lung cancer if you're married to a smoker than if you're not. The health risks for children also increase if they're surrounded by smokers.
Lung disease in kids, particularly asthma and respiratory illnesses, are higher in families in which at least one parent smokes, and particularly if the mother smokes.
It's hoped the latest advertising campaign will encourage smokers to be more considerate of where they smoke and ultimately to actually give up the habit. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The first change was the opening of a deviation at the northern end of the freeway. Motorists travelling north between Minmay and Black Hill are now being redirected under the yet-to-be-open section of motorway to avoid delays in finishing work.
It's only a short detour, it's just around the corner and up the road a bit, but it does keep them away from the heavy machinery and keep them away from the road work. Hopefully there won't be any delays for people travelling through there, but we would urge them to just take that little bit of extra care.
Work is also continuing to complete the next change to traffic conditions at Cameron Park. A section of the new Walls End Link Road will be brought into use next week for traffic travelling on the Minmay to Edgeworth Road. Drivers are being urged to be aware of workers in both areas.
Yes, there will be some detours here and there, but they'll all be fairly well advertised, and we will urge people just to look out for those flagmen and women and just take a bit of extra care.
The $225 million Newcastle section of the freeway is expected to be open to traffic in December.
Thirty of the competition's most promising are in the program. The specialist advice coming from Knights coach David Waite, conditioner Mark Wright and Matthew Johns. The select few learning advanced techniques on how to slow up play with legal but crafty moves. It's hoped the players will go back to their clubs and pass on their new knowledge and become valuable assets when it comes to representative duties.
Hopefully that they're going to go further in the game, and that's what we hope, that they set their own goals and maybe play for Newcastle and go on to the Knights.
Among the squad today, Knights new buy Chad Stevenson. The former sprint champ is working hard to develop a tackling style. David Waite has no doubt when he finds a gap he can leave anyone behind, but he wants to develop all facets of Stevenson's game. Hasn't exactly been all smiles at Wyong over the past 12 months. Harness racing was suspended for the year after the first two meetings lost $10,000 each.
Well, I'd say it's not fair, and I suppose they're looking at the number one track, and the smaller track, well, you go battle for yourself.
Coupled with the change in the TAB tax that stopped many big-time punters laying huge amounts, the club dropped its share of an estimated $5 million in on-course betting. With such a significant drop in turnover, officials were forced to lay off staff and make some drastic cuts to prize money.
We didn't make any big noise about our cuts, and subsequently a lot of it went unnoticed.
The gamble paid off. The club finished with a turnover profit of more than $260,000. However, depreciation reduced the good news into a loss on paper. There's now a queue of 17 people applying for the 9 directors' jobs.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all, because if you're going bad, no one would want to be here.
The AGM and board ballot will be held on course Tuesday week.
Celebrating the International Year of Indigenous People, the Narara dancers from the Central Coast added a little Koori beat to the canteen menu. Also on display, artefacts and original artworks. Today marked the launch of a recruitment development program aimed at opening work doors of opportunity for Aboriginal employees.
It also has career development, because Aboriginal people seem to stay on the one level, they don't seem to go anywhere, and this here is to help them break out of their shell, have more training and apply for more jobs and do something with their life, move up the ladder.
Of the tax office's 740 employees, 1% are of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent.
At first they were scared to come forward and be a recognised Aboriginal person, but now with this happening and the strategy in place, they're very proud to be a part of the public service being an Aboriginal employee.
Information from Operation Brightlight led Mayfield detectives to this house in Montgomery Street, Argenton on Monday. In a backyard shed, they found 263 cannabis plants growing hydroponically under lights and fans. The cannabis plants, now in a safe at Mayfield Police Station, have a street value of more than $500,000. After questioning the 30-year-old male occupant of the house, Mayfield detectives charged him with several offences, including cultivation of cannabis and the possession of equipment used for the administration of the drug. The Argenton man is due to appear in Newcastle Local Court on November 16. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Ten teams of 8 players representing each region throughout the state have been competing in a round-robin tournament all week. Today was semi-finals time. On centre court, it was North Coast up against Riverina. The North Coast number 4 seed, Duncan Hoswell, in the gold shirt, was playing Jeremy Quast from Riverina. In a tight match, Hoswell clinched victory, winning the one-set clash 6-4. Ben Matthews, in the black cap, kept the flag flying for Riverina. He defeated the North Coast Dale Hyde 6-2. Riverina went on to win the overall contest against North Coast and will play off against Metropolitan Southwest for 5th and 6th position in tomorrow's finals. Vying for the number 1 spot tomorrow are Metropolitan North and South Coast. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Only a few hundred of the Hunter and Central Coast's more than 1,000 power station contract maintenance workers attended the meeting. Union officials brought them up to date on what stand Pacific Power had taken over the breakdown of site agreements that could cost many workers more than $100 a week.
We met with Pacific Power yesterday afternoon and it was clear to us that they're getting instructions from the government.
The unions say Pacific Power has told maintenance contractors not to bother applying for jobs costed on an over and award site allowance agreement that has served the industry for more than a decade. Workers voted to stay on strike indefinitely, ensuring that no contract maintenance would be done on 5 of the state's power stations.
Contractors still have their obligations, their contractual obligations to carry out, and no doubt they'll be bleeding in relation to this. They've still got their budgets and time constraints to work within.
The meeting called for talks with Industrial Relations Minister Kerry Chikarovsky and a united approach in the dispute from contractors in a bid to ensure pay levels for maintenance workers.
Not everyone was this pleased with today's English papers, but most in the Hunter gave them the thumbs up, finding generally what they'd studied for was covered.
Blew through it. Easy. So it was a pretty good exam. I just didn't do it very well, that's all.
What all 4,500 students will agree on is that it's a relief the first exam is out of the way, and that's a sentiment echoed by most of their families. Any parent who's gone through the HSC year with their child will tell you it's not easy. But here at Corpus Christi College on the Central Coast, it's been double the trouble 4 times over. Meet Jeremy and Ben Shields, Leslie and Hayley Anderson, Mark and Luke Reedman, and Lyndall and David Gooley. All are twins and Year 12 students at Corpus Christi College. They admit it's been tough on their parents.
My mum's been a bit stressful.
Jeremy and Ben are doing exactly the same subjects and both want to study psychology when they finish. How do you go mark-wise?
We alternate.
Leslie and Hayley are also aiming for a similar career in pharmacy, and while Mark and Luke say they study well together, Lyndall and David thrive on friendly rivalry.
On occasions we have a bit of a biff.
And as to who will do the best in their HSC...
We should get around the same mark.
Why does that not surprise me? Jodie McKay, NBN News.
It's looked forward to by artists and art lovers alike. The Von Berto Gallery sale has people queuing on the footpath for days before. The work of well-known, less-known and up-and-coming Australian painters are all up for sale with nothing over $333. Hepsy Hoyle has slept in her car and camped outside the gallery for a week, all to be second in line when the doors open tomorrow night.
It's good to have something, a prize at the end of the time, that you'll go home with something knowing that, I spent a week on the street for this.
Also in line, Sydney artist Joshua Smith. 4 decades ago, he was the subject of the controversial Archibald Prize-winning portrait by William Dobell. Smith went on to win the coveted honour himself. Paintings are up for sale.
We're also interested in trying to get some valuable work cheap.
Well-known artists such as Pro Hart, David Boyd and John Coburn have contributed to the Collector's Choice exhibition.
They don't have to paint something specially, nor do they have to choose something really remarkable for their own work, but somehow it has become a point of pride to do so.
After Sunday, 32-year-old Graham Morris could be an Australian motorcycling legend. He's already won the Victorian Supersport Championship, and a third place or better this weekend at Eastern Creek will tie up the New South Wales and Australian titles, something even Wayne Gardner or Michael Doohan can't lay claim to. Punching along at an average of 250 kilometres an hour, you could be forgiven for believing there wouldn't be much time to think. But Graham says he's focused only on one idea.
The whole year could be ruined if I manage to, say, have a crash in the first race and destroy the bike or hurt myself. So I've got to go out with a top 3 placing in the first one, and I can basically tie up the championship.
And like every top-class rider, Graham has had his accidents. In 1984, he was almost killed testing a new factory Yamaha. He nearly died twice from his injuries, spent 6 months recovering in hospital, lost his sponsorship and a chance for a ride on the world circuit. But he says the accident taught him a lot.
You've got to put it out of your mind to an extent, but you've got to realise you can't just go out. It's not a sport you can just go out and just take a lot of unnecessary risks, because you'll end up hurt.
Coming through one miracle escape has made him a little cheeky about death. Do you ever think about that, you might die doing this sport?
No, I won't. I'll be around forever.
So he doesn't intend to hang off the throttle at all this weekend.